Hello, everybody. I'm Mike, and this is the Beard of Empathy. Welcome to Damn Fools, where we talk about deconstruction and mental health. Today, I'm joined by none other than the RobotGoat, wonderful RobotGoat. Welcome. Thank you for joining me so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Let's get a little bit of your religious background. If we're going to talk about deconstruction, we're going to know where we're deconstructing from.
Yeah. So I was raised Southern Baptist. I grew up. I went to preschool at my church, which was like 2 blocks from my house. So I went to a religious preschool, and then I ended up going to religious elementary, middle, and high schools as well. Um, I was an avid part of the church. I mean, I did like church choir, but we also had like a show choir, which is weird because we were Baptist. Anyway, I did like tours with our show choir. I did our praise band. I went on every camp, every mission trip. I was I was all in at that little church. Um, Started to deconstruct toward the end of high school, and now I'm here as an agnostic atheist.
So were there anything in particular that prompted you in the direction of deconstruction?
Hmm. That's a tricky thing to navigate because one of the first things that didn't sit right with me was the behavior of people in the church. And now, when you say that, a lot of Christians will then try to reduce your problems to, oh, it's just church hurt. But it went beyond that. It was the fact that I was seeing the actions of these people, like how they were hurting others, and also how it was biblically supported. The fact that they could validly take scripture and use that to weaponize against people and mistreat people. And this in my head I was like, okay, if this is supposed to be like God's perfect word, why is it so easy to weaponize it against these communities, particularly LGBT people and racial minorities? Because I grew up in a very conservative Christian, white, straight area. Um, so just seeing what was supposedly God's word being used in that manner made me start to question, okay, well, maybe it is just something people wanted to be able to do these things and feel like they're being justified by a deity.
People try to justify anything as long as they think that they can get away with it, which is
Yeah,
unfortunate.
definitely. Definitely true.
Disillusionment with the people in the church and the way they were behaving kind of started you walking down the deconstruction path.
Yeah, I remember I don't remember the context of why they were asking, but I remember being asked while I was still in high school and while I still consider myself a believer, like what one of my like church pet peeves was, and I said hypocracy. And what I meant by that was the people who say, oh, we should love like Jesus while simultaneously, you know, protesting against there being a gay club at the university in our town, or doing these like really harmful demonstrations against any sort of pride celebration. Just that sort of thing. Definitely, though, when I got away from my hometown and I got a little bit more breathing room to like explore my personal beliefs is when I really started separating myself from the church. And I did it the way that a lot of people kind of do, which is kind of in stages. So first it was more of, okay, well, I still am a Christian. I just don't participate in church. And then it was, okay, I still have a relationship with Jesus, but I don't like organized religion. And then it was, I don't think any of that is real, actually. I think I've been taught this for a very, very long time. But when I examine it with a critical lens, it just doesn't hold up.
It usually doesn't. Untrue things usually don't hold up when you put the microscope on them.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So that's kind of how that process went. And I know that's a common thing. I mean, some other creators in the space will talk about how they went through, different phases after they initially left the church, but whether it was being deist or Taoist or any other is, well, not any other, hopefully not racist. But it's definitely the ones I mentioned.
Yeah, I would definitely hope not going through a racist stage while you're trying to deconstruct out of.
Yeah.
I know some people may have started out in a racist stage, but as they deconstruct, they might come out of that, which would be good.
Right.
But
Most
there,
certainly, yeah.
but it's in the middle.
I see no reason to be like, God's not real, time to do a hate crime.
No, I've never thought that. I don't think it's going to be in the middle, right? If the racism, if it's going to be anywhere, it's going to be at the beginning.
Right.
Good, like good for it to be at the beginning, not good for it to be there at all, but
Not
good
good
for
for
it to be the
right.
beginning and then moving out of it. That's a good thing.
Grow out of it, yes.
Yeah, we got to grow out of it. But
Yeah.
I don't think it's in the middle. I haven't heard anybody's story where they'd be like, you know what, I love Jesus. Now I'm going to do hate crimes. Nope, not anymore. Like, doubt it.
There is a little bit of loving Jesus and committing hate crimes while you still love Jesus. That is something that does
That
happen.
that is
But
absolutely true. Yeah.
yeah, it's true that you rarely see the other side of that where it's like, I don't believe in Jesus anymore, but I'm still going to be mean to minorities.
Usually, when education hits, tolerance also comes with it.
Yeah. Well, and you see this rise in anti-intellectualism, particularly among very religious movements and conservative movements. I can say I'm so used to like not being able to make political statements.
Make any political statements you want. You can make any political statements you want.
Yeah, still, I mean, I grew up in Alabama, right? So I was in a very Christian conservative area. Um, and we see particularly in these conservative areas how they're saying that, college is just indoctrination, it's a scam. They're gonna brainwash you into believing whatever they want you to believe. When in fact, in my experience, it's more of the opposite. It's more that they encourage you to think critically, to develop those skills to be able to do research and figure out what you actually think about certain topics. Whereas if you're not educated, they could just be spoon fed to you, your opinions, that is. And it's a lot easier to get a population to believe whatever you want them to believe when they're not willing or able to go form their opinions themselves.
When you can literally spoon feed them anything you want. Critical
Right.
thinking is something that is learned. I love higher education. I have a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, a bachelor's degree in psychology. I've even taught classes at the college level. I taught research methods of behavioral science. I taught abnormal psychology to undergrads. I was great, had fun time. I love teaching. Um, I know that what we do in higher education when we're teaching isn't teaching rote facts. It's not memorizing scripture. It's not memorizing lines. It's not like, here's your copy of On the Origin of Species. Make sure you memorize pages 7 through 15 before the next test. Like, that's not what happens. We go step by step. We start with, in evolutionary theory, I'm sure we start with Darwin, looking at what he saw, what he observed, and we go step by step from there, collecting evidence. A lot of times we make students do the experiments to collect the evidence so that they know how it's done. And most importantly, the processes. It's not just about the facts and interpretation. It's about the processes in each science.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of times where and I guess I should say for those who might be watching and don't know, but I do debate streams. But I've had many times during debates where people will say like, "Well, how do you know this for sure? Just because you were told it, or just because you read it in a book?" And it's like, no, I've done experimentation on these things. Like I remember someone asking me if I could prove that DNA was real because have I ever seen it?
Yes.
And he's like, yeah, I have. I've done electrophoresis. I've done CRISPR. I've done PCR many times. Like I have literally seen it. Yes. But I just can't fathom that it's not just okay. Read your book, write I Heart Darwin 100 times. That's the homework.
Right. Do 10 Hail Darwins. You've sinned against evolution. Do 10 Hail Darwins
Right.
and go pray in your closet.
Right. And burn a Bible while you're at it.
Make sure you eat your babies.
Oh, got to get the adrenochrome.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny because I, going into college, had so little knowledge about, I'll say the real world in general, but particularly science, because I was taught young Earth creation in high school. And I only had one biology class in high school, and it was ninth grade, and my teacher was terrible. He would openly admit that he was like watching TV while typing up our tests. And so there would be all kinds of like spelling errors and just nonsense grammar. And even though we were in ninth grade, he was still like giving us coloring pages and putting movies on when he didn't feel like teaching. Deciding to study biology in particular with very little background knowledge about biology really put me at a disadvantage compared to some of my classmates. But I'm so glad that I did choose that area of study, because I don't know what my beliefs would be in that area otherwise. Like, would I still think the Earth was 6,000 years old had I studied political science? I don't know. But being
Political
introduced,
science, they believe weirder things,
yeah, that's
like
supposed to
they
know.
like that capitalism works. Like,
Oh, but it's crony capital. We won't get into that. I've heard that argument so many times. But I shudder to think what misconceptions I might still have about Earth, about evolution, about my own anatomy. I believed the men and women have different numbers of ribs things for too long. Too long. Um,
a lot of people still do.
I I know. I'm glad that I had that opportunity, but I also recognize it's not an opportunity that everybody gets. Some people they only get that really weak education, especially if they go to a religious school, and then that's all she wrote. So I'm very thankful that I was in a position where I got to go beyond that and got to learn more. And it gives me a little bit more patience with those who clearly haven't had that opportunity. The people who come in and say, like, well, we're not animals, because clearly that's just a failure of their education, right? That's not like a personal moral failing that they don't know that we are animals.
Yeah,
Now, if they're an asshole about it, it's a different story. Because some of them come in and they're like, "We're animals, and if you and that we're not animals, and if you think so, you're a dumb bitch." Like that. Okay, okay, hold on now.
but they're setting the tone for the conversation immediately out of the door, though. And
Oh,
at that point, it's like take the gloves off.
it's really interesting. I was talking just the other night with some people because there was a guest who came on my stream and then later that same evening went on to Joel Reads Bibles stream. Completely polar opposite behavior between the two streams. When he came on to mine, he was immediately hostile. He was immediately condescending. He told me that as long as I was overweight, I shouldn't have opinions on things, and that it's clear that my only purpose is to try to get attention. And then with Joel, he was like the perfect gentleman. He was so polite the entire conversation. He was respectful the whole time up until the end of the conversation. And it's like, okay, well, there's one obvious difference between me and Joel. That might be the reason for that.
For the audience, if you can't understand that, it's misogyny.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it was complete misogyny and
Oh yeah. Yeah.
horrifying.
I am non-binary, but most people who I debate against don't understand that as a concept. They just perceive me to be a woman. That's whatever. It doesn't change how I perceive myself. But because of that, I get a lot of particularly Christian men who get so angry whenever they're losing in a debate, for lack of a better term. They just start getting so angry they'll start hurling out, insults about my appearance, my weight, they'll start hurling out like threats about me. I have people leaving like horrible comments, and it's just not the same variety that the men who are creators in this space get. Not to say that they don't get their own fun brand of hatred tossed their way, but there's a pretty noticeable difference between the type and the scale of the hatred towards more feminine presenting creators in the space.
Yeah, there absolutely is. And it's indoctrinated into a lot
It
of
is.
Christian sects.
It is, but I mean, the vast majority of people that I do debate against are men. That's just kind of the demographics of the debate sphere. Calling that seems so strange. It's almost more sad when I get a Christian woman in because she almost always also has a problem with misogyny. It's just internalized misogyny. And so she'll start degrading herself for being a woman. And that's just a whole different kind of like, oh, that's very sad. Because she's doing something that directly minimizes herself and her self-image and her humanity. So it's tough to see that is so indoctrinated that even those that are directly impacted by that behavior feel engaged.
Yeah. So, what kind of things do you do to deal with that kind of hate coming your direction?
So the biggest thing is just the way that I approach my content, I used to do debates before, almost all just straight political debates. And it exhausted me because I took myself way too seriously. I I was trying to like maintain like perfect composure and be, like calm, cool, and collected while having these debates. And it was just miserable because almost every single time they would just see pronouns and they're like, all right, we're going to talk about trans people. So no matter what array of topics I had, ones that I was like well educated and well studied on, they would always want to bring it back to me being non binary. And they would want to just say a bunch of harmful transphobic rhetoric. Now that I have shifted into talking more about deconstruction and religion, in particular Christianity, I have a completely different attitude about things. I definitely, I refer to it as I like to get silly with it. Not a very creative or original phrase, but it's the most accurate that I can think of. Just approaching things with a sense of humor so that instead, when a man says something obviously very condescending to me, instead of just like remaining completely stoic and like ignoring that he did it and like remaining like drilling on to the point, I'll ask them to define like some very common word for me. One time when a guy was asking me like, "Oh, so do you know anything about the Bible?" I was like, "No, never read it." With of course like the Bible is stinky above my head and like hundreds of hours of content talking about the Bible. And so he's like, "Okay, so there's this thing called sin." And I'm like, "Oh, how do you say that? Sin?" Just a very if you can't laugh at things, you'll cry about them.
Very much. Very much.
There's been a lot less burnout now that I'm willing to crack jokes more, take myself less seriously, laugh at myself as well as sometimes laughing at my guests because sometimes they just say really funny things. They really do. I had a guy the other night, you might have been there for it, who accidentally said Abraham instead of Absalom. And I'm like, "Hey, I think you said the wrong name." And he's like, "No, I didn't say Abraham. I'm not talking about Lincoln." Haha, good joke. He said that about him. He said good joke to himself. So that's why now in the comment section, everyone had been saying good joke.
Yeah.
Poetry. I couldn't script something that beautiful.
Well, I think because I was there, I did hear that. I thought it was hilarious. But I think that everybody's trying to help because you said, well, that's going to be my next vocal tick. So I think we're just trying to help you get that started.
Good joke.
Good joke.
It works so well. I mean, even when I go into other people's lives now, anytime I say something funny, I just see a wave of good joke, which I think is I love it. I love having those like little in jokes. Like anyone who like watches Joel and Mezzo's content now just calls me RobotGoat because they can't ever say my name right, whether intentionally or not. I don't know if it's intentional anymore. I know they call me some variation of syllables that sound vaguely like RobotGoat, but most people are just like, it's RobotGoat. So I'm RobotGoat now.
How did you get in contact with those two creators, Joel and Mezzo?
It's so strange because, and I've jokingly said that I'm like the parasocial final boss because before I got back into doing any sort of debating or content creation, I would watch their Bad Bible Debates podcast. And I thought they were the funniest people. I would listen and I would send it to my partner Joshua. I'd be like, "Oh my sense of humor just aligns so perfectly with this sense of humor. Like this is incredible. I'm like binging all of the episodes."
I did the same. In between, we got the BBDs. Sorry, that made me feel things, weird things.
D's. Yeah, can't blame you for the things you feel. I love the little bits that they did. I have a background in improv, and that sense of humor just meshes really well with a lot of the improv skills that I know. And so I'd been creating content, and I at one point had, without asking first, but I played one of Joel's songs on my stream just because it was like so perfect. I forget, I think it was the Old Testament one, but someone had specifically said like, "Oh, we don't really look at the stuff in the Old Testament." I'm like, "Oh, this is too perfect." And I played Joel's Old Testament song. And because of that, there was a little search thing at the bottom of that video that said Joel reads Bible. So when I was making another video, I was doing a like top 10 breakdown of funniest recommended searches on my videos because TikTok, it does like a little AI generated like what should you search based on this video, and I had some very very strange ones. I had one that was like atheist prove God real. I had like who goes to hell. just things like that. And one of them was the Joel Reads Bible. So I included that in my video and I tagged him and he left some kind of like comment laughing about it. That was the first way that I got in contact with them. And then he started coming to watch some of my streams. I just happened to see him in my stream from time to time and I'd just be like, oh, hey, Joel, you know. And then one night when Joel was up on Mezzo's stream, I came in. Mezzo did not know me whatsoever. But one of the verses they frequently talk about is Leviticus 21:9 about burning a priest's daughter, which is promiscuous before marriage. So I came in with a background with flames behind me and a big old letters that said, I heart burning women. So that was Mezzo's first ever introduction to me, was me entering a stream. I think I was wearing like my bonnet to sleep in too. So I was in a satin bonnet with I heart burning women above my head. Long story short, ended up doing a freestyle rap, as one does.
I gotta find it. I'll have to find it. I will have to find
Here's
it.
the thing, because of the delay, for some reason, Mezzo decided to play the beat from his end, so I sound horribly off beat. But on my end, I was right on it. And I think after that, Mezzo had followed me, and I just sent him a message like, I'm so glad that paid off, because that would have been horrible otherwise. And he was like, that was a bold move, but I liked it. So now, every now and then, I pop in and annoy them on their streams. They've been super helpful and supportive toward me, and they're great pals to have. Once I compared them to being like my fun uncles, but then they kept calling me kiddo. So I won't call them my uncles again because I don't want to be called kiddo again.
Yeah, I can understand that. Kiddo's not a fun nickname to be saddled with.
I'm at least a decade past kiddo, I feel like.
Yeah. Unless the person's really, really old, but Joel and Mezzo don't strike me as old. Like
well, Joel's in his early mid to late 20s, and Mezzo I think is 58, somewhere in there. That's their canon ages according to them.
I hadn't heard their ages, but they don't look old enough to be able to get away with calling anybody they come across kiddo. 80, 89, you call anybody you want, anything you want.
Hey, well, I look forward to that then.
Yeah, I would like to get to be an octogenarian myself. Yeah. My first time hearing anything about you was actually on one of Joel's lives.
Makes sense.
He was having some technical issues and very, very confidently talking about how he had been hacked by RobotGoat. He was very upset. There were a lot of slurs.
Oh, of course, as Joel is known to do. Yeah, that we had an ongoing beef about that, where either time, like if either of us had technical issues, it was the other's fault, obviously. I don't know whether like I snuck up to Canada or he snuck down here, but we were messing with each other's live streams left and right. I would also just come up with weird bits to say, either going into their lives or having other people say it in their lives. So there were a few of those that became like running gags. Yeah, it's a good time. I always love coming up with new strange things to bring to them with no warning. But it's kind of backfired because the other night I brought in a bunch of people and I was just having them all talk about how they wanted to go fishing because it was related to something that happened in my stream. And they're like, what are all these people talking about? Oh, RobotGoat rated. Because apparently now, anytime people say weird things in chat, they just assume that I've said them.
Oh, on your last one, I think it was at the end of the last one, you just said you're going and like act like Christians, like everybody just say something Christian.
I would go in and say the most vague Christian platitude, I think was the request. Yeah, and a couple people were like, I got in trouble for that. And I'm like, boo, that's lame.
Oh, mods.
Yeah.
So those darn mods.
So grew up very religious, involved very heavily in your church, started questioning the hypocrisy of what was going on, went off to higher education and away from the influence of home church, starting to deconstruct. And now you're here. But let's touch a little bit on some of the mental health stuff. You talk about before deconstruction. What was mental health stuff like before deconstruction?
Ooh, very little support. But definitely a lot of stuff going on. I did go to therapy once when I was like 17, but I had pretty obviously had anxiety since around age 5. And then I had exhibited signs of depression about when I went through puberty. I'd say it was the start of that. I remember being on the way to school in 6th grade and like telling my mom that I wished I was no longer alive. And my parents, they weren't really given the tools to understand how to handle mental health whatsoever. In their mind, if you go to therapy, if you go on any type of medication, that is an indication that something's wrong with you. That is an indication that you're crazy. It was a bad thing because we'd had some family history of mental problems on both sides. Woohoo, jackpot. So they were very resistant for me to seek treatment, but not just out of malice, just because they didn't really understand. When I got to college, I had a really bad stint of mental health issues. It was like my first semester of freshman year, and it was a combination of a lot of things. It was going off and being on my own for the first time. My family moved out of our house when I went off to college, so the only house that I could ever even remember living in was suddenly no longer a part of my life. I was in a big city where I knew next to nobody. And though my parents did also move, they were now farther away than they would have been if they'd stayed in our old house. So I was very isolated. I had no tools or knowledge to help me deal with these things that I was going through. And so I ended up being involuntarily institutionalized for a couple of weeks at separate times. So like 1 week here, 1 week there. That was the first time I got diagnosed with anything. So generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder. And at the time, I'm not sure if this was still, I was diagnosed with Asperger's, but I think this was like right before they had kind of phased that out as a diagnosis.
Before 2013?
No, it was after. So it's weird that they still told me that, because they still it was
DSM-5 was published in 2013. And they got away from Asperger's as a then moved to the autism spectrum disorder as a whole overarching thing was the DSM-5.
Because they specifically said to me Asperger's, and I thought that was like strange, because I'm like, is that a thing anymore?
It probably wasn't. Like, it probably is new. Like, I have for the first like 5 or 6 years, I was okay with people like getting things wrong because that's the transition. Yeah. But by
it would have been in that time.
By 2020.
It was before 2020.
Yeah.
This was before COVID happened. So I got those diagnoses. I didn't get to go and do the fancy full autism diagnostic test because of cost reasons. But I spoke to multiple doctors, psychiatrists, and psychologists, and they all agreed that I'm on the spectrum. So getting those diagnoses, starting to see a therapist regularly, and then finally getting on medication was like an entire new world for me. And I really started trying to understand my mental health so that I could treat it seriously. Because there was definitely kind of the idea that it wasn't the same as like any sort of physical health issue, right? If I had broken a bone, it wouldn't be the sort of thing that's looked on as like a personal failing of my own. If I had, gotten some sort of chronic illness, that wouldn't have been something that my parents were like, oh, you're just doing that for attention.
Yeah. That's a thing I have to tell clients regularly. Come in and have a lot of negative self-imagery about themselves because like I'm experiencing things. I'm just an anxious person. I'm such an anxious person. I'm terrible. I'm like, would you still be talking about yourself like this if you had a broken leg and couldn't walk a mile?
Right.
And most of the time I say no. If I know I can't walk a mile if I have a broken leg, well, yeah, but you've got this severe anxiety that's preventing you from engaging in social things. So it is a physiological thing in your brain.
Right. Precisely. Yeah. But that was really tough for me to reframe because I felt that way and had that reinforced my whole life, that like you gotta toughen up and get through it, whatever it is. If you let it get you down, that's just you letting it win sort of thing. There was never really an effort to like understand what was happening. I remember telling, I think it was like an orthodontist or a dentist or something that was like asking if I had any like known mental health problems. And I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure I definitely have anxiety and depression. And they're like, what are you taking for it? And I was like, taking for it? What do you mean? And they asked my mom about it, and my mom got pretty upset with me for even bringing it up. She's like, if you take anything, you're going to become a zombie. You're not going to be yourself anymore. Um, those drugs, they make you a person that you're not. So that was the impression that I had about taking medication for mental health.
That particular attitude, I think, came out of the late 90s and really early 2000s. There was a very large push, especially in schools, diagnosing kids with ADHD when they didn't actually have it. And the people doing the diagnosing were general practitioners who didn't know what they were doing. Parents were coming to them saying, the teacher says the kid's got ADHD. And the general practitioner was like, okay, here's Ritalin. And just putting big doses. And the problem is that you get too high a dose of Ritalin and it makes you a zombie. So that was happening to people, especially people who don't have ADHD. That was happening to. It became a concern, but it became a bigger concern than it actually was. And people who were holding on to the stigma against mental health help really grabbed onto it.
I didn't know that's where that came from. But yeah, that's definitely the type of rhetoric that I was hearing from my family, my mom in particular. So I was like scared to start taking medication. And it didn't help that I had to go through like 5 different ones before finally finding one that worked for me, because the side effects for many of them were horrible. There's like a roughly 4-month block of my memory that is just gone. Yeah. Landed on Zoloft. Woohoo!
It's good that you found one that works, as that is always the goal, is to working with your clinician and your medication provider to get medications that are going to work.
Yeah. Going through the trial and error was worth it in the end. I'm glad to have been able to achieve where I'm at right now. Like I look back, and anytime I have like a bad mental health day now, having that frame of reference of what that used to mean compared to what it is now makes me feel a lot better. Because there would be times where I like wouldn't be able to speak, where I would like be hurting myself, not with implements, just hitting mostly, which obviously is disturbing for anyone to witness. But those bouts of I don't like using the term meltdown, but you hear like autism meltdown, whatever you might be visualizing is about what I was experiencing. I was completely overstimulated. I couldn't express what I was feeling or what was happening. It was a scary time, and I'm very grateful for Joshua, my partner, because he saw me through all of those most difficult times. He was the person who could help calm me and could help redirect me and knew what coping mechanisms helped get me through those times. So some of the roughest moments of my life, he was there to help me through it and still love me on the other side. That's a pretty great thing to have. But it has been so much better managing my mental health with the tools and the knowledge of, what I'm facing and how to overcome it. And that's not to say that, my mental health struggles are over, I'm perfectly fine now, I'm never have to worry about that again. That's unfortunately not the reality of it. I know, as you're well aware, it can be a lifelong battle, but it's one that I was previously trying to go into unarmed.
Which is and undefended. You don't even have armor on for it either.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, I had no clue what was going on.
Younger you just didn't have support, as you said. You were lacking that support through a time period when you had a lot of stuff going on, and not lacking that support because of apathy, but because your parents just didn't know how. And then the difference, I think, afterwards was you had support. Your partner was there to support you and offer you the support that you needed.
Yeah,
one of the most important things.
I'm still working on and trying to express to my family things about my mental health, especially my grandparents, because they're up there in age. So having to explain to my grandmother, like, this isn't something that I really have absolute control over. Even if I didn't want to experience any depression whatsoever, I can't just make that go away. There are things about my body that make that happen. And to her, she had no knowledge of there being any sort of biological aspect. To her, depression was just like severe bad feeling. So if you fix your attitude, no more depression in her head. So having to explain to her, like, no, that's not how it works. Similarly, with me being on the spectrum, there'd be a lot of things where I'm like, hey, this particular thing gets me really overstimulated. And she would be like, well, you just have to get adjusted to it. Or you just have to like get used to that feeling and then you won't be bothered by it anymore. And I'm like, that's the opposite of how it works for me, actually.
That is not going to help. That is not helpful at all.
I'm not going to do it. No, because she would try to go for like this exposure therapy sort of route. And it just always put me in a place where I ended up more anxious and upset than before. It's probably what she was told was best when she was younger.
Yeah, that was a lot of what people were told about a lot of different things. Walk it off, or just suck it up. Just be happy. You can be happy. But it is a physiological change in the brain.
Right.
Pathways in the pleasure center can't activate. You can't feel good things. You can put a smile on your face, but if you're not feeling anything.
Yeah. And I do look back, and I definitely, and this is even something I've been like delving into more recently. I definitely see where aspects of my mental health were negatively impacted by the things I was being told in church, because I internalized, in particular, a lot of the messaging about being like inherently sinful, about being a broken person, about like being unforgivable. It's only by grace that I can be forgiven. That's not a super healthy thing for a child to think about themselves.
No, it's not. That is the number one. That is the number one reason why I detest that religion, is because that's baked into the foundation of it. That is the foundation of it.
It is.
Everything relies on that idea that people are born terrible, broken, corrupt things and can't change that.
I look back at some of my old prayer journals from like some of the rough times in my life where I was first starting to feel that depression. And it's the church speak is so clear in it, where it's like, thank you, God, for forgiving me, even though I don't deserve it. Like, please help me become a better person. It's really, really rough to go back and read. And even though that was a while ago, I still kind of remember how that felt. I remember not being able to stop thinking about, oh, I'm a bad person. I've done these bad things. I deserve to be punished for this. I frequently saw in those old prayer journals the use of the phrase like unforgivable. And looking back at the things that I did as a kid, it was like I broke a classmate's pen, and I put that
unforgivable,
unforgivable, horrible, filthy. And at the time, that's what it felt like. It felt like any sin that I committed. I mean, all sins are equal in the eyes of God. You do one sin, you've done them all. So just something like that, I would fixate on for months at a time, feeling horrible about. And I would pray every night, asking God to forgive me for it. And it was like a compulsion almost to pray and ask forgiveness for every single little thing I did. Not great. And that was something I hadn't really put together until somewhat recently, when I was going back and looking at some of the sermons from my old church. And I was listening to them. I'm like, oh that's exactly what I was telling myself when I was in like middle school. And it was just me echoing the things that I was being taught on Sundays to myself. No wonder I thought all these things about myself. Someone I trusted in my life was telling me that it was true.
It's rare that you get to look back and see something that clearly, that there's a direct parallel between those things.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's taken this long. It's been well over a decade now. And now one of my like common topics that I do for debates is specifically why I think it is harmful to raise children Christian. And that's, like you said, that's one of the biggest aspects. It's so central to Christianity that I also think is the most harmful to kids. I think definitely some of my anxiety too also stemmed from the expectation of perfection, of following the Bible, of not committing sins. So I was so worried to do anything against what I'd been told I should be doing. Yeah, I was a very, very anxious child. Not to say I'm not an anxious adult, but I think my parents said that I would come home crying from school like every day from the time I was like 5 until I started driving myself to school. And then I'd just cry on my own. That's so bleak.
Everybody's done it from time to time. Cars are a great place to cry.
They really are. They really are.
We
Yeah,
all
but
feel insulated. We feel insulated in our car. We're separated
I
from
like
everybody
to
else.
believe it's a lot more soundproof than it actually is.
So do I.
But it's funny because before I met with that therapist for the one time that I did, my parents had a meeting with her first, and they were telling that story about, oh, well, my parents wouldn't have used they, them, but I'm going to refer to myself that way. They started showing these signs of anxiety around like first grade, age of 5-ish, came home crying from school like every day for years and years and years. And the therapist, according to them, looked at them and went, and you're just now getting them into therapy? Fair question.
I would think that looking for a therapist earlier, right around the time that it became like 3 or 4 days in a row when this was happening, I would have been looking for a therapist.
But when you've got 12 years, who needs that?
You're fine. You've been just crying every day since you were little. It's fine.
Yeah.
No.
I do still cry pretty easily. I know this about myself, but now it's usually over like cute animals, not just because of existing. Okay, that's not completely true. There's some days where it's just existing.
I gotta say I'm a crier. I was gonna say a different word, and I was like, no, that word sounds really bad. I was gonna say I was a baller, BAWLER. I'm like, but no, that W might be different. So I'm a crier. I cry. I love going to any kind of movies, like any Disney movie. There's gonna be tears. There's gonna be tears.
Musicals make me cry. Just ugly cry.
Inside Out is instant. Like,
oh.
There's several times in Inside Out. There's not a therapist alive who doesn't love that movie. And the second, they're both phenomenal. The wonderful thing about them is they worked with psychologists from Stanford to get things right.
Ooh, that's important.
Yeah, they did a lot of really good things.
I personally, I've been obsessed with Broadway since I was a kid. So I somewhat recently got to go to New York for the first time in more than 10 years. And I packed in as many shows as I could get like dirt cheap tickets to. And I mean, the most expensive ticket I got for Broadway while I was there was $54. Like I was going on a budget. But I saw Maybe Happy Ending, which is a phenomenal show. I had seen it before in a regional production, and it made me cry so hard. I knew it was going to because I already seen it twice. But I came out and my whole face was just, tear streaks, red, puffy eyed. I'm like, that was incredible. That's the experience I want to get from art.
And there's such a different quality in the crying too.
Yeah.
Right. The crying after school because of anxiety and depression, that's dirty. Like it feels like awful.
Oh yeah.
Coming out of a movie or a show, you're crying because you just got into it, got connected. Like that's cathartic afterward.
It is.
It feels really good.
It is, but I do now. I try to be ready now and just assume that I am going to cry when I go to see a show. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm probably going to cry. So bring tissues. If I bother to put mascara on, make sure it's waterproof, that sort of thing. Because I know myself well, and so does Joshua. So he'll be like, "You got everything you need."
Stay hydrated. Stay hydrated.
Right.
Is that a mini cup? Tiny?
I knew you were going to do it!
It's a regular size cup. It's a regular size cup, guys. It's a regular size cup.
It's so average. I don't even know why people started saying that.
I have no idea, but it's a running gag.
It is. I don't even think about it because we just have so many of these. They were very cheap. I think I got them at like TJ Maxx or something. They're like 50 cents each. So I have a ton of these cups. Now I gotta get self-conscious every time I drink out of them. Consider that. Whoa. I don't know.
I'm upside down. Ow. Stop.
My camera just decided to take a tumble for no reason. So the trim, he could have settled back in here. Hi, sorry. We're still on shaky cam mode. Why did my tripod just do that?
How God hates us.
Hello. Let me Blair Witch it for a second here. I don't know why that happened. Like, my desk is you can definitely see my camera shake a lot of the time.
Yeah.
It's a very cheap desk from online, but I upgraded my setup so I could have 2 monitors. I'm definitely affected by the TikTok brain rot, as it's called, where it's like, okay, I'm going to be playing Minecraft on one monitor, but I'll have YouTube up on another because my brain just has to have as much stimulation as possible now. I hate that, but it's where I'm at.
I've this I'm neurospicy as well with the ADHD. I was born with it, as we all are who have it. My diagnosed when I was 15 because I failed my first 2 years of high school. I did well afterwards, though, like after I started getting medicated because I actually had ADHD. And like I started my junior year of high school with a 1.8 GPA and I graduated with 3.65.
Damn, well, good job. My anxiety pushed me a lot academically. Um, so I remember when I was very, very young, like either kindergarten or beginning of first grade, I brought home a progress report that had a couple of B's on it. And I remember my grandma telling me, like, oh, no, you don't want to get B's. You want to get A's. So from then on, I never got a B. I got only A's on every report card from then on up until the end of high school. I was my class valedictorian. I took a bunch of early college classes to boost my GPA to get that. It was like a cheat code because our GPA scaling system was so bizarre. Like AP classes were weighted differently, but so were like the early college classes where we would, just literally go to the university and take classes. And at one point it was like, okay, I really, really want to take this particular class, but because it's not AP, it would lower my GPA too much, even if I got an A in it. So I didn't get to take the classes I wanted. I got to take the classes that would get me valedictorian. So I think at the end of high school, I had like a 4.3, something like that, because of all the AP. But then college, I did very poorly for the first several years. I started out in computer engineering. I was at this very high-ranking engineering school, struggling a lot with my mental health. I was also a student athlete because I had a track scholarship, and I was doing something that completely, like, I was disinterested in. So that wasn't a great recipe for getting great grades. Yeah,
Very
I
little
failed
motivation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I failed some classes, which would have horrified me, the idea of that, when I was in high school. My GPA definitely got better once I started doing biology. I think there's still like a couple of B minuses in there, but I got some A's again. Woohoo! But I felt that very, very intense burnout that can happen when you're so used to high achieving, because I was a track and field athlete. I was head of our robotics team for multiple years. I did math Olympics. I did Scholar Bowl as well. We did go to nationals, but we did terribly. A lot of teams went to nationals, like 300 teams went to nationals. And we were placed like 290th. Like we were in the bottom like 10 teams there. We did so bad. And there was also that quick side tangent. There was an excruciating one where it was coming down to like the final round, and they like randomly delegated out the two topics. And the other team, which was a public school, their topic was the Bible. So us at our Christian high school, we were sitting there going, no, that should have been ours. We've been studying for this our whole lives.
What? No, you're Christians. You never read the Bible.
Oh, we were made to. Just in fragmented, carefully curated parts.
Right. Until you read the other parts, which are not carefully curated.
That's
and those are the parts.
Not so Christian.
Yeah. Those are the parts that are
Yeah.
not Christian.
Yeah, we didn't read the Numbers 31, we read Romans 8, and it was like, oh, look, Jesus is so nice. Just a completely different picture than what the text actually paints.
Rarely is the name Absalom spoken on the pulpit.
I feel like we were vaguely taught about that story when I was in like 8th grade, but I don't, it definitely wasn't the way it's presented in the text. It was something like Absalom just like staged a coup and took over and then like married David's wives, I think was the way it was presented to us. Yeah. Not great. I got us completely off track there. I'm so sorry. I've been trying to be better about that and about keeping my guests on track, not letting people pivot. Because oh boy will they.
Oh yeah. They're a bunch of ballerinas.
Oh yeah.
Thank you so much, RobotGoat, for joining me today and sharing your story. I think it's a very powerful one. I think a lot of people are going to identify with some stuff that you've talked about. I look forward to seeing more of your streams and more of your content. I think that you have a great wit and great intelligence to bring to the table, and those fools who try to rhetorically come against you are unmatched. Like, they don't have the weapons to get into the ring. Like, they shouldn't, but they're going to continue, and that's going to be funny. So I gotta say.
That's
All right. Thank you all out there for joining us. If you made it this far, please like and subscribe. And I'm always looking for other people to interview. If you're in the deconstruction community and want to talk about your mental health, you can give me an email at thebeardofempathy@gmail.com. Anyway, we'll see you in the next one.